Okay. Welcome back to the ACE relationship community. How are you doing, Terrance?
I'm doing good. It is hilarious that we keep making these videos late at night, but hey, that's the only time we can get any spare time, so it works out.
Absolutely, man, when people aren't calling us for help. But we're always happy to do these recaps for you guys, just in case you couldn't make it to either of our two previous sessions. With that being said, you might see that this title slide looks a little familiar. It's the same from the first one we did. This is round two. So we're taking a little bit of a different approach and giving you guys some more information in this one. So for you all who don't know me, I'm Ryan AC. I'm a relationship engineer. And along next to me is Terrance.
Yep, I'm just the criminologist. That's what I do.
And in this series, Terrance and I have been taking a couple of different angles at a more holistic view of relationships in general. And what we had been starting out from the beginning is talking about genuine partners and what makes a genuine partner. A big part of it is genuine connections. And the first time we had talked, I talked about taking sincere interest in somebody, especially from the realm of what our group is titled after, ACE. And sometimes we may use ACE or authenticity, credibility, empathy, and responsibility. And that first time I ran through, we talked a little bit about attention and that you two really do need to have attention on each other when you're interacting with each other. And if not, that may be a problem moving forward. And then again, question, and this comes in two parts. Asking deep, meaningful questions to get to know somebody. I gave a few examples then, but also just continuing to step back from your interactions with them and really questioning whether things are making sense or not. Following up on those questions and following up on your interactions. We're not trying to take a go with the flow approach, but an intentional approach. So, what is it that makes sense to intentionally do moving forward? And lastly is after we've kind of decided how we want to move forward with the information that we've got, then we actually need to go and do that thing and be proactive about it and choosing more relevant interactions, types of dates with this person. I gave a few examples then. Um, and what are we going to do about what we've learned? And let's make sure we do something useful. And that was back in the first one. So if you want a little bit more detail, go back and watch our last recap video. What I did in this last session was focus not just on when you're talking to somebody or going on a date or trying to get to know them, what you should be focusing on, but really what makes the solid foundations of a relationship, again, coming from our ACER framework. And that starts off with your ideology. And at the base root of ideology, it is what defines your ideological, your moral compass. And to put that more in perspective, what is something that they and you both prioritize above everything else that you're willing to sacrifice something else of importance for that thing? So, in the line of morality, right, somebody might believe that when they have a conflict of interest, they might believe that they should remove themselves from being the decision maker in a situation, even when they're being given the power to make the decision and can make the decision for themselves, gaining a whole lot of money, power, position, whatever it might be. Their ideology might be no matter what, you need to take that thing, even if it comes at the cost of something else. So we want to make sure the foundation of a relationship means that our ideologies are in line and compatible with each other. Next, our character and our characteristics. And from the multitude of characteristics that we can talk about, a good starting point is thinking about three, which is trustfulness, truthfulness, and reliability. And the idea is that in someone else, when we're looking at their character, can we trust this person to keep the secrets that they should keep, to keep the promises that they say, and that they don't have nefarious purposes for us? Are they truthful in what they say? Now, truthful goes beyond their words. We need to also look at their actions and see if they match up with what they're saying. And the last part is reliability. Can I count on this person? If they tell me they're going to show up at 8 o'clock, do they show up at 8 o'clock? And even if they don't, we know life happens. Are they constantly in communication with us to let us know what's going on? So, in the realm of characteristics, we have on this sliding scale, some of us might be more patient than others, some of us might be more energetic or uh, extroverted than others, some of us might be a little bit more reliable than the others. And really, what we talked about is we want to make sure that they're close enough in all of these characteristics that we have when we compare each other. Because if they're not, and they're too far apart, what ends up happening is we end up feeling like we're parenting them. And as soon as we feel like we're parenting somebody, not growing with them, we come to resent them. So, in the end, is our character compatible and comparable with our own? Do we help each other, or do we feel like we're parenting each other? Next are our goals. What goals do we have for our own life that we're pursuing, and what goals do they have? And the goal that somebody has, regardless of a relationship, what they're working on while they're single, or what they're going to continue working on even when they have become um, entwined, engaged, married, whatever term you'd like to use with somebody, is what meaning do they have in their life? Because they're going to spend that time on that even when you're together. But more on top of that, when you're getting to know them for the sake of a relationship, do your own relationship goals align? Because this is where most often people get into a relationship and they don't realize that they either don't have goals and they've been unspoken, or they're completely diverting from each other. So before we start committing ourselves to somebody, let's just start and see if I have clear goals for a relationship, do they? And if they don't, then maybe the lack of goals gives me enough information to know this may not be the right person for me. And lastly was, again, always execution. We can talk theory all we want, we can make plans all we want, but sometimes those plans are only good as what we actually do with them. So, are they consistently working towards their own personal goals and meeting, as well as what they want in the relationship, or not? Because what they're doing outside of the relationship, even before we've established one, tells us a lot about how they're going to treat us and how this relationship is going to move forward. So, with that being said, I talked a little bit about love. When a lot of us were growing up, perhaps we thought about relationships as relationships are meant for love. You fall in love first, then you get married. You build it after you've fallen in love. And I'm not saying, and I didn't say that love needs to be absent or does not matter in a relationship. But I wanted to draw our attention to something that Terrance is going to speak a little bit more on as well in the future, from a different angle. But when we focus on emotions as a reason or a sole qualifier to start a relationship, then we are letting our emotions drive our decisions. And one issue with our letting our emotions drive the decision is especially problematic people bank on the fact that we're not thinking and lead us with our emotions. And even if they're not doing it intentionally, then we don't actually have a reason to commit to somebody. And there are many things that we could love or like or go after because we love the idea of something, but it's not actually good for us. So That's why love was not part of the fundamentals or foundations of a relationship. In order to get that love as a part of a relationship, we first need to qualify why we should spend time or energy or invest in this person in a future going forward. And in a future presentation, I will talk about how we actually build love, but not right now. With that being said, the next slide is a little bit of a demonstration on how people use emotion to try and get us to ignore our gut feeling and our logic to put us in a position where they want us to be. Whether they are doing it intentionally with bad intentions for us, or whether they are simply unaware of it, the basic matter is that people tend to play on our emotions to get us to do what they want us to do. It's a little bit of a manipulation tactic. So I'm going to be showing a video from a very well-known horror film.
Yeah, we'll
And that
talk about
horror,
it together.
yeah, Terrance and I will talk about it together.
Yep.
And that horror film is called It. For any of you who have seen it, just keep in mind that I have cut out the actual more gruesome parts of it. So it's not going to be as triggering. And for any of you, please know that I did cut out something. So when you do go watch it, it might be a lot more jarring. With that being said, Terrence, you want to start us off?
Yep. So we have this starts off in the beginning of the movie. Um, I forgot the kid's name. What was the little kid's name again?
So now this little kid's name is Georgie, the one who just put the boat in. And one thing we wanted to point out is his brother is on the walkie-talkie, and he ironically says, "Be safe." And we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
So Georgie puts a little paper boat in the water, flowing down the sidewalk that his brother gave him.
Like real talk, I don't know how this was supposed to end. Like, like if you put the little boat in the water, it's probably gonna like go down the drain.
Well, we're running forward without thinking what's ahead of us, right?
Good point. So goes in the sewer. This is a dangerous sewer system. Like, yo, like what kind of HOA is in control of this when you stop and think about this?
Dude, I can't tell you the number of times like our toys when we were kids went down the sewer, and the only way to get down there, by the way, as a 10-year-old, I lifted the manhole cover off the top of that sewer myself and then got down there. But that was the only way. You can't peer into this like this. But poetic license, right? It's a movie.
I was about to say, like, this is just another example of like people just not paying attention, just clear and present danger right there. So, but continue. Like, this is a jacked up community.
And we'll see exactly what makes it so jacked up, right? So
Yeah.
he's staring into this darkness looking for his boat, and we see the eyes. Now, that jump back is his gut feeling knowing something's wrong.
That,
So he stays, but why does he stay? Because normally when you see something like this, you run.
that's actually something interesting when every victim I've ever talked to, if they had a chance to when it wasn't like a surprise attack, when they had a chance to see their potential predator beforehand, they almost all told me they had at one time or another they had the sense to run away from this individual, but they fought it. And it's such a problematic exercise that we ignore our gut feelings. It's like I remember somebody said it. If you feel it in your gut, you're about to get kicked in the nuts. Like that's the way to think about it. Like right before you get a fatal blow, you're gonna feel it. And if you feel that tingle, you gotta run.
Yeah. And look, our gut could be wrong, but at the end of the day, the risk to us is greater than the possibility of being wrong. So it's always, again, to be safe rather than sorry.
Well,
especially when we're talking about people we don't know and letting them into our lives. We need to be very careful because this person is one of the most potentially dangerous people in our lives.
stranger
So
danger is real.
I I just wanted to point out before we move forward, because this is a common theme. They get us to not run away from them by, in here, literally, but mostly figuratively, holding something up over our heads to get us emotionally to stay. Now, this kid is young. He's more concerned about his boat that his brother gave him than the actual danger that awaits him in the future. But this is what often happens. We get that gut feeling to run, but they find something, an emotional way to keep us there.
Unfortunately.
So, I mean, look, he probably maybe didn't run away because this clown is in the sewer, right? It's not like he can jump out and grab him. Maybe this is what's going through this kid's head, but he knew that he should have run away and he didn't because he really wants that boat. And you can't hear the conversation that's going on, but this kid says, I'm not supposed to be talking to strangers. And so what does the clown do? He says, my name's this, your name's this. We're acquainted. We're no longer strangers, right? And he smiles. So when we have a gut feeling and we have a reason to run, problematic people, people who have nefarious purposes for us, they're just going to keep trying to find a way, our emotional or logical reasons to run away.
Yep.
Because look, at the end of the day, I'm going to be honest. Yeah. Somebody who is sane and has their life together, if they approach somebody because they're interested in talking to them and the person's not interested, they walk away. They say, okay, their life is good. There's no reason to talk to, to follow another stranger. And so the persistence is what's really concerning here.
Well, anytime you're trained to overcome objections, what you're trying to do is getting somebody to do the version of action that you want. So if I'm a salesperson and I'm trained to overcome objections, the objections are put in place for the consumer's benefit.
Hmm.
The desire to overcome objections is because I want what I want.
Hmm.
Like it's called the difference between offensive space and defensive space. So you're putting the client on the defensive and the offensive, which means the salesperson, or in this particular situation, the manipulator. The manipulator is the one controlling the action. So I'm a
Yeah.
big believer. I don't negotiate with people I don't need to. So I
Yeah.
just tell them that no, I'm going to do what I want, and that's what's going to happen.
Just like a relationship and having a reason to get into a relationship, we should have a reason, like a legitimate reason to deal with people that are dangerous to us. I
Yes.
think that's a pretty good life philosophy. Is if I really can't find a reason, then let me not actually stay in this situation.
Yep.
But I wanted to point something out real quick. This kid is obviously terrified, so the clown is trying to butter him up. He's telling him to envision a circus and things to try and kind of put the fact that a clown who's in the sewer, which is obviously horrific, like it is horrific, just finding a clown in the sewer. So he's trying to put things in perspective with this kid in a way this kid is not terrified. He's trying to say, but think of the peanuts. Can you smell the peanuts? Think of the circus and the sounds. And this kid, he's trying to take this kid's mind emotionally off of the terror that is in front of him to try and think, no, 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 it's okay. We're basically in a circus, right? Everything's okay. And the kid's laughing. So again, these type of manipulators, the people who really don't care about us for us, they care about us for what we can do for them, pull on our emotional heartstrings. Everything about it is emotional in a way that they can keep us where they want us, even when we have reasons to run away. And I kept this in part of this clip because I think this is really important just to think about. which Terrence and I will get into a lot in the future, the neighbor sees this very weird thing where a kid's just literally what prostrating in front of a sewer. And she's like,
Well, that's
oh,
normal.
whoops,
She's like, that's normal.
my apologies. Okay, my bad. I must have skipped over it. But basically, she doesn't even say anything about it. She doesn't have any concern for what the kid is doing. And I don't want to stay on it too long. Terrence and I will get to it in a future presentation, but this is why community is so important because community helps put our own lives in perspective when we're not paying attention to something. Our friends, our family, somebody else that we trust, we want to trust the fact that if they see something wrong, they'll tell us, not let us go to our doom simply because we're unfortunately ignorant about something that's in front of us. So,
Very true.
neighbor doesn't help. Neighbor doesn't say anything. So, clown is buttoning him up, right? Gets him to laugh, and right there, he turns from a laugh into that dead stare because he's thinking about what he's going to do next and he's anticipating it. You got any comments on that, Terrence?
Um, Not really, other than a lot of times when you're dealing with people, we might only see it for a second, or maybe you'll see it a little bit longer, but us, I don't care how cunning a manipulator is, they're going to drop their guard in one shape or another.
Hmm.
And that's why it's so important that we have enough self-confidence that we're not focused on ourselves. Because what often happens in conversations is if you have any insecurity, you're not actually looking at the other person. You're concerned with yourself and how you are portraying yourself.
Hmm.
And this is the problem. So manipulators are looking dead at you, looking for signs of weakness, and we're looking at the floor, we're looking out into the ocean, we're looking up the sky, we're looking at anywhere else but the person in front of us because our anxiety is starting to take over.
You know, excellent point. And not only that, if we are looking at the person in front of us, we're more often concerned with what they think of us. We're not actually reading them.
Yep.
So it's like that old, you know, the old problem that people have in middle school and high school. They say that they were sweethearts and then, they break up and they say, "No, I wasn't in love with them. I was just in love with the idea of them." And that's what often happens. We don't know anything about the person in front of us, but we're concocting fantasy fairy tales about how this could potentially work out in our head, and we're not focused at the person in front of us.
Danger.
With that being said, immediately the kid's gut picks up on it, but he's still not running away. Bro. So, what ends up happening is now he's smiling again because he knows that the smiling got the kid to smile earlier. So now he's taking it back to try and keep the kid there. And once again, like in the beginning of the video, he's holding up that emotional tie that kid has was, wait, 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 don't go. Didn't you say that your brother was going to kill you? And if we're being honest, right? Kids don't really believe that, their older sibling is going to kill them. We know it's a little hyperbole, right? But the idea is that this kid, and a lot of times in our lives, the danger we know, we want to stay away from, and we don't properly evaluate the danger we don't know that's in front of us. And
Bro.
so we know the danger that we know, and we want to stay away from it. And we kind of hope that the danger we don't know isn't really a danger. Rather than saying, you know what, whatever this danger that I do know is, I'll take it. I'll deal with it because it is better than the potential of something so much worse. And the way that manipulators get us to not understand how bad this is by playing on the emotions that we already have. So that's what he's doing here. He's saying, hold on, what about your boat? The thing that got you to stay in the beginning. Let's talk about it one more time. Don't you want it? And so he's enticing this kid to do what? Get closer and reach in. And right there. Why was that so important, Terrance?
Hey, that's what they do. They let
They,
you think that you're going to get close to what you want, and then they take it away from you.
and they're testing whether you're going to run away or how deep they can drag you in.
Yeah.
So, of course, he tries to get the kid to do it again, and the kid is going to do it.
And he got.
He got.
He got.
He got.
Little Georgie will not be in the sequel.
Absolutely not, unfortunately. An innocent kid that whose community was not there for him, who made a few unfortunate decisions, was taken advantage of in a very manipulative way. It is a very tough scene to watch.
Yeah.
I wish it on no one. And one of the biggest reasons why Terrance and I are trying to help people is because so often we've heard people that have been in situations or simply not committed to a good situation for themselves for 10 or 20 years. And like this kid, unfortunately, the longer and the closer we get to something and the more we invest in something that isn't good for us, the harder it is to back out. Emotionally, we regret it. We regret the time that we've spent, and we understand how difficult that is. So we want to help people. If you're in a difficult spot, help you understand how to get out of it. And if you're not, and you're looking forward to the future and you want to say, I don't want my life to end up a certain way, work on it now. Some of the things we're giving are immediately applicable to your life. Just a few things. See if the person in front of you has the same goals. See if they're actually working towards those goals. Are they compatible with you? So early on, we can get rid of the emotional attachment because when we don't have the emotional attachment, we can easily say somebody in front of us is a bad idea. Okay, I move on. But the emotional attachment is what makes it so much harder. And with that being said, the reason that my last slide here is somebody lonely at the park bench is because loneliness, I think, is one of the worst situations, the worst tortures that we can put upon ourselves or others. And the reason I say that is because, socially speaking, we are social creatures. We love to interact with other people. And even if we might be a little bit more introverted than others, we like to interact with the people that we care about. And when we cut ourselves off from society or people cut us out from our own community, it manifests as physical pain. And one of those goals that we're talking about that's good to set or good to think about is when we want to get into a relationship, how far ahead are we thinking? Do we want to be in a situationship and then, I don't know, maybe someday get married? What do we want? Because the beautiful thing about marriage, and I want to be very clear, I think that a lot of the times we get ideas from social media because social media is very easy to scroll through, and the loudest people are the most frustrated. And more often than not, those voices of frustration don't always give us a holistic view of what we can look forward to. They mostly highlight problems. This is why most of the news we watch these days is for how many people they can get to view. And the most people who watch are watching because there's something controversial or negative. So we can talk about all the bad things that can happen in a relationship, but really marriage is a lifelong conversation. I would love to have somebody that I consider my best friend, who is my ride or die, who wants what's best for me, who's reliable, who has fun with me, who puts my health and well-being over what I say I want to do. Somebody who's really looking out for us and is always there for us. And if we think about marriage like this as a teamwork of somebody who's never going to give up on themselves or us or the relationship, then it's something to really look forward to. And if we build it the right way, we can have that. But if we ignore a lot of these foundations of a relationship, we are risking a type of loneliness that, again, I don't wish on anyone. And I am very happy that a lot of the people in my life who were like this switched their approach to relationships and are doing a whole lot better, including people I know that are 2 or 3 years away from retirement. And for the last 10 years, were extremely bitter. They switched their mindset just a little bit, their approach. And, shortly when they retire, they're going to have somebody to sit next to on the park bench, and not just on the park bench, to enjoy the rest of their retirement and their life with. With that being said, Terrance talked a little bit more in depth about sociopaths and psychopaths from a different angle.
Yeah. So first thing we're going to talk about is just the victimology.
Mhm.
And victimology is really the study of why certain people get targeted by predatory individuals. I'm going to go through everything fairly quickly, just because this is kind of a recap of certain information while we're adding other information. And I live in Michigan, and we're getting hit by a giant thunderstorm, so I just want to make sure that that we wrap this up, but while I still have power. So the first thing that we want to look at is proximity. So how close are you to problematic people? Now, these can be people that you bring into your life or areas that you go to. So, for instance, one of the most dangerous things to do is to put yourself in an environment with people you don't know who have no real connection to your well-being. This is a recipe for disaster. So, when we're going to different locations, like me, I'm I've been in a lot of dangerous situations, so I'm always looking for the exit sign. As soon as I go in a building, I want to figure out how many ways I can get out because I trust in my own ability to survive. I don't necessarily trust in other people, especially strangers, worrying about my well-being. Next one is physicality. And this is very important because there's been a lot of research to show that there are ways that we conduct ourselves that make us look like an attractive victim. Just perfect example is these two people in front of us. Both him and her are both looking at the floor. They're looking unsure. They're not looking at their environment. Their eyes are almost closed. This is the typical looking like a victim like portrayal. And when you show video clips to prisoners, especially prisoners that are there for committing robberies and other assaults, they almost always choose the same individuals. They choose the person that's not paying attention, the person that looks like they're afraid, looks like they're unsure about their movements. This is no different than being on an Africa safari and you see the type of prey items a lion will pick out. They're going to look for something weak, something that looks unsure, something that, a prey item that looks like it won't fight back. Next is psychology. So there's there's thought processes that make us attractive to criminals. One of them is letting somebody know off the bat your weaknesses. Other things is letting people know your insecurities before you really get a chance to know what they're about. Other things you can let somebody know is that you don't have a support system with you. This is all information that can be used against you. So before we start doing what is often like um, conversation, just I don't know, what's the best way to think of it, Ryan, where you're just dumping a bunch of information onto another person.
I mean, before you start telling them your life story and everything about you, right?
hmm I'm thinking of a phrase, but it's escaped my mind right now. But often when we're lonely and we're not used to having human connection. The minute we get something that seems like human connection, we just dump all of our information onto that person.
Desperation. They
Yeah,
can smell desperation.
desperation conversations.
Yep.
And they're so problematic because what happens is you have one individual that's gaining all the information, but then you have another individual that doesn't really have any information against the other person. So this is not a connective situation, and we want to be very careful of that. All right, next slide.
Yep. One comment I wanted to make is we want to make sure that we're doing an equal trade and that that equal trade even makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, Somebody who focuses on their insecurity or their weaknesses and is willing to tell a stranger is telling them, you don't know what safety is, so you don't know that I'm a predator. Great.
Yep.
Now I'm going after you.
Well, something as simple as like if you went to a job interview, you wouldn't go in the job interview and say, "Hey, I would work for $9 an hour."
Nor would we tell them all of the individual problems we have with ourselves. It's hard enough to answer their question, what's your greatest weakness?
For real. And a lot of times we don't look at it like that, but it's a very similar dichotomy when we're going in for a job interview. But real quickly, I want to teach you about critical intensity. And basically, if you want to know the best time to catch a predator, look at when the prey item slash victim is active or vulnerable. So if you have a situation like this where you have a ton of people, like in this picture, it's a lot easier to hide within the crowd. So this would be called a high pedestrian flow. A low pedestrian flow is when there's almost nobody around. So there's a low amount of victims to fit the victimology. The very dangerous situation is when you have a medium high. So there's a medium pedestrian flow, which means there's a high point of predators to pick people out. So it's a point where there are enough people to prey on, but not enough people to stop the offender. I always liken it to you got to be very careful leaving bars and clubs, especially being out between like 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. because a lot of times law enforcement is going to be busy on other issues in a community or in a city, and this is a great time for predators to go out and look for victims. So watch out for that. Next one.
Yep. And just real quick, I mean, depending on what city you're in, it doesn't even have to be 1 a.m. Sometimes it can be 10 or 11 p.m. I was unfortunately in a car crash a few years ago at 10 p.m. Bad enough that we needed an ambulance for somebody and like the police to come in and take a report. And the police literally drove by us saying, I don't have time for this because I'm answering the call of somebody getting shot. So it really depends on a whole lot of other factors. How big is the city? What type of crime is there? It doesn't always have to be the straight go to 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. when bars close.
Mhm. Okay, so one of the things that you need to watch out for is if you're used to problematic relationships, there's a concept called swimming in toxicity, which means that if you get so used to being in toxic relationships, a normal functioning relationship will become toxic and a problematic relationship will become normal. Because just like these goldfish in here, goldfish swim in an environment that's toxic. There's a lot of bacteria in the water. And if you put like fancy goldfish in a regular water dish, they'll die because they're used to that bacteria. So oftentimes when you take somebody that's been in toxic relationships for years and put them in a regular healthy relationship, they do not flourish. So one of the things we need to do is be honest with ourselves. If we're used to problematic relationships, before we hop in another relationship, go get your relationship coaching. If you need counseling, go get your counseling, but make sure you are where you need to be mentally before you hop in a regular relationship, or you will likely self-sabotage. All right. Another thing, we're going to go through these last slides pretty quickly,
Yep.
but attention is not intention. And this happens a lot with women. They get attention from a man, But the attention does not mean he has the intention of actually caring about you or loving you. Collecting love from someone could be somebody's sport. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean they're going to reciprocate it. It doesn't mean that their promises mean anything. It doesn't mean they're going to love you or protect you. So that's why it's so important to make sure that the attention comes with intention and that they're moving their life in the direction of a commitment with you. Not that they just shower you with love bombing and all this other foolishness. Okay. This is something else that is very important. Movies tell a lot about someone, especially why they're attracted to certain characters. So, what I found is, especially when I dealt with gang crimes and stuff, psychopathic killers were often very interesting in the movie Scarface. Because Scarface is like the gangster's dream of starting from the bottom, becoming a drug lord, making all this money. You get the women, you get the power, you get the cars, you get the mansions, and at the end, Tony Montana, quote unquote, went out like a G. He didn't go out crying. He went out guns a-blazing. This is such a powerful image to a lot of young men that are raised in these dangerous environments. And this becomes their quote unquote messiah. This becomes, this is the best way for my life to live. So I'm not saying everybody that watched Scarface likes this, thinks like this, but if somebody does have a fascination with Tony Montana, I would ask more questions. Another thing is Joker. Joker is, I thought it was a pretty strange movie, and it's a movie that is extremely popular with individuals that believe that the entire system is corrupt.
Mhm.
You know, it's often very popular with incels, individuals that have trouble connecting with other individuals. Many times I have done consultations, even consultations on the meetup group where somebody has been fascinated with the movie Joker, and it was often somebody that had repressed anger. So this is another conversation we should have. Like if somebody's into this movie, it's like, why? What does it say about the movie and how they view the world, but also how do they view their own standing in the world?
Mhm.
Lastly is The Wolf of Wall Street with Leonardo DiCaprio, which really brought the character of Jordan Belfort, the real character, into the public sphere. Like I had never heard of Jordan Belfort before I saw this movie. But this movie is extremely popular with scam artists. The whole NFT, the cryptocurrency bros, all that stuff. Because The Wolf of Wall Street basically gave the template of how to do a pump and dump scam, and it's still extremely popular to this day. And what was interesting about this movie is it really glamorized being a scam artist.
Mhm.
They really didn't get into, the damage that this person caused all these other people. It didn't really get into um, what happened when he went to prison. It was just a lot of his partying and the art of becoming a great manipulator. So if
He
somebody's
spent,
into this, if somebody's really into this movie, I would ask a lot of questions.
I
What's up?
mean, Jordan spent over what, a decade in what, 10, 15 years? What was it? Something like that in jail. And then when he got out, went straight back to scamming
I mean,
and was
that's his
part of the
nature.
reason this movie exists.
Well,
And
this movie made him very popular.
yeah, and there I want to point something out real quick is there's one thing about the telling of a good story and liking a movie for the telling of a good story, but what Terrence and I are trying to get at is not just that. It's somebody connecting to the story or connecting to the character in a deeper way. Almost to say is, I wish I could be the Joker, or I look up to the Joker. That is something to really pay attention to, is not the cinematography and what they think about the cinematography. It's what do they think about if they were in that position, would they like to be in that position? Is that something glamorous to them or not?
Exactly. So one thing I do want to add is that he scammed over 1,500 people out of well over $200 million. And ironically, he only served 22 months in prison.
22 months? I thought it was a lot longer. My
They
bad.
made it seem like it was a lot longer, but guys like him end up snitching on their friends. They end up snitching on all these other people and working with the FBI and doing all this other stuff. So they rarely serve that much time in prison.
Makes sense. Thanks for checking that out for me.
That's no problem. So here's a powerful green flag, and this is something you want to notice is that people that are used to solving problems for the goodness of the people around them, they do it without even thinking about it. So there's this very famous video of this, it looks like a grizzly bear,
Mhm.
fixing this cone for no apparent reason. But we speculate that the bear is just used to seeing the cones in this area upright. So seeing it turn, on its side, the bear's like, yeah, this is not how it's supposed to be. But this is something to notice. Does somebody go out of their way to solve problems that they're never going to get credit for and doesn't seem to be motivated by glamour? They just solve problems. They help people out without trying to gain credit for it. It's not like the YouTuber that's going to record themselves giving $200 to a homeless person. It's the
Mm,
person that just instinctively does something to fix something or to help somebody. They see somebody shaking on a ladder and they yell to the person that the ladder is shaking, or they go and try to hold the ladder. It's just they see problems and their first instinct is to solve it.
mhm.
Habitual behavior is extremely important. Okay.
Absolutely.
This is one of the upcoming things we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the algorithm challenge. Where does one allow their mind to drift and thus be taken? And so much of the blame goes to social media. However, social media is often a reflection of our own interests. My social media is going to look very different than other people's social media because I spend so much time. I look at things that are happening in human behavior, criminology. I look at cars. So my social media feed all gives me knowledge. It gives me knowledge and it gives me things to talk about. So we need to often take more responsibility for our social media and say, this is not happening to me. This is happening because of me.
Mhm.
The next part is the passive consumer versus the active thinker. We don't want to be a passive consumer where we just let people drag us around. Just like the algorithm. You don't just follow the algorithm where it wants you to go. You create a path. And when somebody tries to take you off your path, you say this, no. And
Mhm.
you don't have to explain it, just say no. Next,
Mhm.
we're going to talk about the power of suggestion, how influence shapes identity. And what this is, we need to do something extremely difficult, which is to sit back and decide who we're going to be in this world, what we're going to stand for, where we want to take our lives. Because if we don't know where we want to go, we're never going to know when we're off track until much later down the road and we say, dang, how did I get here? Oh, well, we got here because we didn't have a destination, so we just drove aimlessly.
Mhm.
The last thing we're going to talk about is the masculine journey, choosing a purpose over passive existence. And what we're going to talk about is specific influences that have influenced men, especially under the age of 40. Things that do not come up, that a lot of therapists are not aware of or do not bring up, that if you're just studying the male world, these things come up. Like the importance of Grand Theft Auto, the importance of the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial, things like that. The importance of when cartoons actually started to tell a legitimate story. So I'm talking about the difference between like Bugs Bunny versus anime like Dragon Ball Z.
Yep.
And this is extremely important because so many women don't realize that these influences show up in the masculine journey of how somebody looks for a wife. how somebody decides what to do for a career, how somebody wants to live, how it explains other culturally relevant things like the rise of influencers like Andrew Tate and Dan Blitzerin, and a whole bunch of other things. Even something as simple as why is this picture in front of us? Well, this guy right here is the creator of Meetup. This is Scott, I think, Heiferman. But this person was a multi-millionaire working at McDonald's. And what often happens is people will ask me, where do I find quality people? Where do I find good people? And it's not like a central location. It's not like a coffee shop called the Good Brothers that you go to and find good people. You, as individuals, we need to have a better eye of
Mhm.
looking out and noticing individuals and noticing quality in people. Because unless you get referred to someone, unless somebody brings you into some of these groups, because in general, married people hang out with other married people, unless you get that invite, you're gonna have to go out and get it on your own. And that might seem scary, but I'll tell you that 95% of your competition won't do it.
Mhm.
So if you go through this process of learning, it's gonna likely put you in the top 5% to 1% of eligible people in the market. And that's all I got to
Absolutely.
say on this topic right here.
I mean, I think you covered it well. I'm going to give my part of it when we go through them next time.
Okay. All right, let's get out of the slideshow and maybe we'll just say a couple other words. Oh, look at that. Thank you for attending start.
Nice.
Nice. Nice. All right. So, yeah, man, just a big believer that we really overcomplicate relationships. We really do. So, like me and my wife, we got kind of bored earlier, so we started driving in the middle of a thunderstorm. We're
Of
just
course.
Yeah,
Of
so
course.
we're just going pretty fast in the middle of a thunderstorm. But it's not my first time.
Mhm.
Like I've ran from a tornado before.
What?
Yeah, it
You
was
never
fun.
told me this story.
I mean, like I'm 36, so like I've had a lot of years of doing dumb stuff.
And you're still alive, which means you're at least somewhat competent, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So, but it was probably like the dumbest thing I've done. However, it was a bunch of sports cars. We were all driving really, really fast. I wasn't gonna slow down. And I think the cops were at least after a couple of us. Of course, this is completely in Grand Theft Auto. This is not in real life at all.
Of course.
Of course, it was all on a server.
We talked a little bit about, what it means to, I mean, we introduced what living life like a GTA server was, but we're going to get into a little bit more in the future and why that phrase is important to a lot of men and the journey that they've taken, which is what we talked about. It's going to be coming up a little bit. But yeah, I agree. I think we overcomplicate relationships because I think a lot of us just weren't really told when we're young, or we didn't have a good example in front of us of very easily, this is what a good relationship looks like, and this is how you evaluate somebody. So we have this idea of how good we can have it, and then we skip over all of the process to make it happen. And with the best of intentions, we find ourselves in a really bad situation because of it. And all we're trying to talk about is give you guys parts of this process so that you can get that end goal, that dream that you're hoping for. But we gotta make sure we're actually taking those steps properly before we get emotionally involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you talk to a lot of clients, when you start talking to thousands of people, whether they're relationship clients, whether this is also talking about people that are in prison, people that are in the system, it's amazing how individuals will engage in all kind of behavior, whether it's assault and batteries, taking drugs, doing all these things.
Mhm.
But when you tell them, "Hey man, I think it's time for you to come face to face with you. come face to face and have those conversations with yourself that you don't want to have. That's when people get terrified.
Yeah.
That's when people get terrified. And it's
If I know it's hard, but the more we do it first, then there isn't really anything for anyone to hold over our heads. If I know what I fail at and I've cried about it and I've written about it and I've worked on it, then it doesn't mean anything for somebody to come and say, "Hey, I know 5 years ago you were a coward," or "I know you've done this." I know I've done it. I made my peace with it, whatever it was. And I know I'm not that person because I've worked on it or I'm currently working on it. And when that confidence comes only from accepting and facing who you are and saying, but I don't have to be this and I'm not going to be. But if we run away from that, then the terror of somebody seeing our weaknesses is a very easy way to control us. And it keeps us from our true potential.
yeah, like I don't care if somebody has to write on a sheet of paper that most people's opinion doesn't matter. Just keep
Mhm.
writing that on a sheet of paper. Is when you stop caring about the opinion of others, and then you can really start living your life.
Yeah.
And then you only add in the opinion of others if it's on the right side of what's good for you.
Hmm.
If it's not on the right side of what's good for you, why are you listening to these people?
Yeah.
They really don't matter. And what I mean they don't matter, they're not gonna be there for you when you need them to be. And when you're not around, they're not protecting your reputation anyway.
Hmm.
So forget them.
Yep.
All right. But until the next time, I think we're filming again. I don't know. And like, so the
On
next
the
event is going to be
12th.
on the 12th. The next event is going to be on the 12th. So the next upload will be before the 19th. So, all right, Ryan, I will talk to you later.
Sounds good, man. Be safe and don't go running into any more tornadoes, man.
Man, it's boring in Michigan. I'm headed out there. I'm doing what I want. See ya.
See you, man.